The Lion and the Unicorn. The lion and the unicorn were fighting for the crown. The lion beat the unicorn all around the town. Some gave them white bread and some gave them brown, and some gave them plum cake and drummed them out of town.
All right, guys. This is the Maniac Magee Nursery Rhymes, and it is a final project of creative writing. I'm going to challenge you to take a Mother Goose nursery rhyme and tie it together with Maniac Magee. So, Mary had a little lamb, anyone? If you aren't familiar with very many nursery rhymes or that doesn't ring a bell, I bet Mary Had a Little Lamb does. And I bet you've heard of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and Humpty Dumpty and Hickory Dickory Dock and Three Blind Mice, the Itsy Bitsy Spider. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. They're those poems that you heard and sang and read when you were little. We're going to use those and our knowledge of those in order to do this project. So the task. You'll be using a classic Mother Goose nursery rhyme as your mentor text. We've used mentor texts before to rewrite poems. Think of Where I'm From and any other poems we might have worked on or other writings that we've used a mentor text to model after. So you're going to decide how you're going to use Maniac Magee. Think the theme statements. Racism can happen to anyone. Homeless people are homeless because they're lazy. That's 2 of the 4. An event or a scene that really stands out for you, specific characters, parts, part 1, part 2, or part 3, or all parts. Like it says there, the whole book in a nutshell. Maybe you want to really tackle the whole novel. I've had students do that before. Or any other creative way you can highlight the story Maniac Magee. Okay, so then you're going to use Maniac and rewrite it into the nursery rhyme form that you have either been assigned or chosen. Kind of depends on what we do. So let's look at some details and examples that I've got. Okay. Here we go. All right. So I'll be giving everybody this, or I'll upload it to Google Classroom, one or the other. We're not going to spend too much time on the directions here, but you can kind of see it's a restatement of what I just showed you on the PowerPoint. Your understanding of the characters, events, or a theme is what you're kind of trying to showcase here through rewriting the nursery rhyme. You can see I'm going to want you to choose a topic, event, or characters, just like I said, but we really want to work on using strong and vivid verbs and adjectives and adverbs. Your word choice is going to be really important to this project. So the first draft that you write is probably not going to be the one you want to stick with. You're going to want to get it all out there, really fill it in, but then start working on the rhyme and the rhythm and the words that you're choosing. Kind of like we talked about Jerry Spinelli constantly using play on words. You're going to do that same thing as you write the poem so that those of us that have read Maniac kind of are on the inside joke or the play on words. We understand what you're saying because we've read the story. So remember, the rubric doesn't look very good on my iPad. The 1 is out of order, but we're going to look at the number 5 there because I tell you, when you're looking at rubrics, that's where you're aiming. You want to look at the top score. So when you're looking at your ideas and content, you're going to want to stay really focused on whatever part or character or theme that you choose and stay to that. And then you want to make sure that your details are accurate. I've really had some students go really well with this. This is where your word choice comes in. But also I've had students not be very correct. They've gotten some of their scenes or even the names wrong. So be careful with this. Don't hesitate to go back and use your book. Of course, you want it to be relevant to Maniac Magee. Your knowledge, insight, or unique perspective lends a satisfying ring of authenticity and originality. In other words, just your creative side. Put that in there. Then organization. This part, very similar to our other assignments we've done when we've used mentor texts. So I want to make sure that you follow the form of the nursery rhyme that you've either been assigned or you've chosen. And with that, when you're titling your own nursery rhyme, when you're titling it, you're going to want to put who, like what it's modeled after. So maybe you call it Maniac Magee, inspired by Humpty Dumpty. You kind of see how that works, so that your readers know which nursery rhyme you're using, because then they know what rhythm to kind of say in their head as they read your poem. And then conventions, of course, we always want to worry about cops, so make sure you're good with that. So that's the 5. That's what you're aiming for right there, okay? So I have an example here. However, it's an incomplete example. So remember that as an important piece here, that this example is not complete. So here's my original rhyme. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horsemen and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So one of the first things I have to do is, of course, decide what part of Maniac that I want. And then I have to look at my poem, and I need to look at how it rhymes at the end. So I'm hoping that you can see that we have wall and fall. Those rhyme. So when I write mine, I have to make sure that my first line and my second line rhyme. And then I've got men and again, and that's meant to rhyme. So I have to have my last 2 lines rhyme together. So here I've decided to use the story of Finsterwald. So you can see my version here. Jeffrey Magee sat in a yard. Russell and Piper thought it too hard. All the kids' fears and all the lost souls couldn't scare Jeffrey from the black hole. So I used that black hole. That's where that word choice comes in, that play on words, where if you remember that scene when he goes back because Russell and Piper have kind of dared him to, and they talk about the black hole and the vacuum of when Finsterwald opens his door. And so that's why I used that. So I went back in and read closely that section to kind of get some ideas for my words. The other thing that's going to be important is to know the beat. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. So I have to make sure that I can say it the same way. Jeffrey Magee sat in a yard. Russell and Piper thought it too hard. I have to make sure that the rhythm fits. Sometimes it's going to be syllables, like I'm counting Humpty Dumpty, Jeffrey Magee. You can see both of those have the 4. I've got a double and a double, like a Humpty is 2, Dumpty is 2, Jeffrey is 2, Magee is 2. Okay, so I had to get a little creative. Instead of using Maniac, that's too much. So I couldn't use that. So I had to get kind of creative with my naming there. So remember, that one is incomplete. It's just an example. But if you haven't captured it all, so here's what I've done. I'm using Humpty Dumpty, and I'm going to continue it now so that I can make it more complete. Okay, so what I decided was I picked different legends or moments that Jeffrey did throughout the story that were big. So this one I did Cobble's Knot. Cobble's knot was the answer to all. Could he untie it or would he fall? Hester and Lester and all of East End watched in amazement as Maniac began. He sat and he stared at the tangles. He slept and he thought through all angles. All the kids' attention was on the hero. Untie it he did, but pizza he'd forego. Jeffrey Magee untied a knot. Everyone cheered quite a lot. All the racial fears gone, white and brown, couldn't keep Maniac from leaving town. So this time I focused on Cobble's Knot, and I made it much more complete. I told the whole story of Cobble's Knot, and if you look, it's really just this Humpty Dumpty 3 times. Stanza 1, stanza 2, stanza 3. Okay, so that's your challenge. This is not easy. It's kind of a word puzzle of sorts. It may come quickly at first, but then you're going to have to go back in and really make sure that rhythm and rhyme is there, and that those word choices that you make are spot on for Maniac's story. It really ends up being pretty cool when you're done, and so I look forward to reading them. I'll talk to you soon.